Kindly take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to start the next workshop, Access to Excellence, here in the plenary. We have a few seats left, but it's filling up pretty quickly. So if you want to get one, come and join us right now in the plenary.
Vai precisar tanto do café como da água. Precisa?
Só da água. Este pode estar fora. Hello? Can you hear me?
Thank you very much for coming punctually and settling into your seats. A packed house we have for the next session in our competitive edge afternoon, and that is Access to Excellence. And I'm happy to hand over to the moderator for this session, Manuel Electro. Manuel, you have a full house.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session. It's about access to excellence, closing the R&I divide. And I'm also happy to say that you chose the best session to attend. It's the most exciting. It's probably one of the most controversial issues that we're talking about today and tomorrow. So good choice to everyone. My guests today, my very distinguished guests, are two of them here in person. It's Jiří Nantel, who is the Deputy Minister of Education, Youth and Sports in the Czech Republic. So welcome very much, Jiří. We have Mark Pleško joining us from Slovenia. Mark is the CEO of Cozy Lab in Slovenia, and he is a physicist, a researcher, an entrepreneur, an investor, and we are really very happy to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Online, we have Graça Carvalho. I hope she's hearing us. Graça, of course, most of you will know, she is a member of the European Parliament. She was, among many other things, Minister for Science and Higher Education in Portugal, and of course one of the most active members of the European Parliament in the area of research and innovation. And we are also very happy to have her with us online. Hello, Graça.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much.
So let me just set the scene before I ask our panelists a few questions about what we're discussing here today. Of course, when you see access to excellence, when you think about closing the R&I divide, you're all thinking about a fundamental issue, which is the different levels of success in R&I across Europe. And that also means, let's say it very clearly, that different countries have different levels of success in applying to the framework program, to Horizon Europe. Now, we all know that this is a very touchy subject, it's very contentious. In the last Horizon negotiation, Horizon Europe, we all know that widening was one of the most difficult issues to negotiate, and indeed it was the last thing to be agreed upon. Beyond the program, beyond the funding program, we also have other issues to deal with, other policies, such as how to deal with synergies among funding programs, how to deal with the attractiveness of research careers, a theme that we will be discussing tomorrow here at the dedicated session. But ultimately, I think we have to go beyond the issue of funding, beyond the issue of the R&I divide. I think today's discussion should be about potential, about how to fulfill Europe's potential. If different countries, different regions are not performing in Europe, we have unfulfilled potential. And we don't live in a bubble, we live in a geopolitical context, and that's something that I think we should all worry about together, independently of where we live in Europe. So I perhaps start with you, Iji, as a representative from a national government. And my question to you is very simple. What is for you the national policy that all member states, not just your own country, should put in place, should develop in order to improve R&I systems that can compete in Europe and beyond?
Thank you for the question. I think you touched an important issue, that the performance is maybe much more tied than only just to funding, to culture, and the overall conditions in which researchers and the research institutions operate. And I think as far as the role of national governments go, I think we should consider that science and innovation is a very serious and tough business that requires high investments, high operational costs, and has high risks. So I think the most important lesson and principle that we should follow as national government, be more business-like and also a bit more ruthless when it comes to also expecting and demanding the performance, of course creating conditions to the risks to be taken within reasonable amount of time, but also being able to create conditions for research groups and research institutions diminishing and growing. The system needs not to be static, it must be business-like, it must be able to take risks, and it must be committed to results and excellence. That's the principle. Too often, because especially in the smaller and mid-sized member states, it can get political. Too often, compromises are being made. And that's tricky because in many countries, there's enough funding, but it needs to be wisely distributed and it needs to be tied to excellence.
Fair enough. The issue of funding is, of course, extremely important. And maybe I turn now to you, Graça. And to you as somebody who, from academia to the national government to the European Parliament, you have had almost any job or every job that you could have in this business. What have you learned in order to do better, in order to help member states, help national institutions do better to unlock excellence in Europe? What would be your magic recipe, Graça?
First, thank you very much for the invitation. It's very good to be here today in this session. I'm very much attached to the widening. I was rapporteur of the strategic agenda of Horizon 2020, and I have designed the teaming itself. One of the I consider a good instruments in the widening. So first, before entering the teaming, I think that to gap, close the gap in Europe, we need to have ways to identify excellence where excellence is, and the excellence is everywhere in Europe. And for that, we need to have a framework program that is simple, that is flexible, that can be doesn't have unnecessary burdens and barriers that is more difficult for the small units, the units that are far away from Brussels to apply. So a simple, flexible framework program, a lot of dissemination, a lot of contacts with the stakeholders in different parts of Europe. But we realized that that was not enough. So we had to be more proactive. And this is the reason that we have proposed, it was a proposal of the Parliament in Horizon 2020 of the twinning and the teaming. But I think teaming is more effective. It's based on the fact that we go much faster up the stairs of excellence if we go together with a group or other institutions that are already higher than us. So we go together, we one that is more developed, the framework program that has achieved already a lot of results on the framework program, joint efforts with the one that is in a less performant region in terms of framework program, and together they do a research agenda, research objectives, and they help each other. And that is the spirit of teaming. So teaming is not about cohesion and should continue inside the framework program. It should be a bit scaled up because it was like a pilot stage project. And some of the countries have benefited a lot from teaming. Portugal, by all, is probably the one that has benefited more, but also Cyprus and others. We can fine tune and improve the rules to that these participation in teaming as also a better and more impacted research ecosystem of the country, but is a very good program that should continue. We should also discuss if it should be country by country or region by region, because there are some countries that have very developed regions and some regions that are left behind. And will not be difficult to implement region by region because the Commission has the innovation scoreboard per regions. So it will be important, easy to identify which regions could be eligible for the teaming. So I think that an improved and scaled up teaming program should be very important. But first, you need to simplify, you need to make the framework program accessible for small units and units that are away from Brussels. And on the top of all this, we need an ambitious framework program. We need to have an ambitious budget to fulfill all the areas and all our targets and our objectives. We have already called for the double of funding for the next framework program compared with the present one. So we need to start with a high level because there are voices that are in the opposite direction. There is a lot of competition from other policy areas, so we need to defend research and innovation, and we need to defend research and innovation that is for all Europe and not only a certain part of Europe.
Thank you very much, Graça. Indeed, I mean, this dimension of the type of actions that we have today under widening is, of course, the key is about partnering, is about bringing together partners from different entities and to improve through mutual learning at the end of the day. This is the basis of widening today. Before I move on to my next guest, I would just like to ask our organizers to put in the QR code for Slido on the screen. So you will have the opportunity throughout the session to put your own questions in the system, and then we can tackle them when we get close to the end. A lot of comments about the framework program, a lot of comments about EU funding. Mark, your experience is very special in the sense that you were a researcher, you became a successful entrepreneur, you don't seem to have needed much help from the framework program. How did you do it? What kind of advice would you give to researchers today, especially to young researchers starting out?
Well, I would say young researchers, at least like I was myself when I was young, they want to make their mark, right? They want to make their mark to the world by solving the most difficult challenges. And the obvious, the conventional way would be, go to prestigious institution to get a Nobel Prize maybe, or go to Silicon Valley, make a startup, unicorn, get a couple of billions. But what I'm saying is that equally difficult challenge, and also rewarding if it works out, is to go to your own hometown, to go to your home university, and do the same projects with the students from your university. Let your colleagues, your students, work on the same international challenging projects. Give them the work that I, when I was a student, wanted to have and didn't give. And I think I can give this to my colleagues. So to summarize that, our company shows, yes, we can. Now, you will accuse me of plagiarism with this expression, but I heard it's actually good to be a plagiarist. You can get a job at the ministry, right, sometimes. I will tell you my own buzzword, my own slogan, and my own slogan is this: work globally, live locally. Because, thank you. Because at the end of the day, life is not just about work, right? It's, ties to the family, to the friends, to our culture. This is what makes us human. So we should be at home and be successful. And now to answer your question, I think it is, it is equally it's very flourishing, fulfilling and rewarding a career to start as a scientist, to learn things so that you know something. Then use this knowledge to contribute to society with practical value by making products, by making business. And also, don't forget, contribute to the local community, in my case, Slovenia, by creating jobs and by paying taxes. And this is actually a noble career, I would say. And let me explain what I mean by flourishing, fulfilling, and rewarding. Flourishing, I can say every year I advance. I mean, I have been in my working career for almost 40 years, but every year, as a scientist and as a businessman, I learned new skills. I was taking on different roles, not just in business, but also in society. I was meeting interesting people every day. Now, today, we meet new people. Fulfilling. Obviously, I like challenges, intellectual challenges. And believe me, now in business, I have many more intellectual challenges than I had as a scientist, because as a scientist, I had to work with nature. Now, as a businessman, I have to work with people. And we know that people are much more complicated than humans, and than nature. And the last thing, rewarding, to be honest, I earned enough money for myself as well. So I'm good in that, but honestly, I don't need much money, so I try to invest as much money as I can into new startups similar to ours in order to grow the ecosystem in our country, and so that the next generation of people will do not just one like me, but the majority will do it. And this, I think, in this way, we will create more value, more wealth in our country, and a better life.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I should also point out that throughout your career, in fact, you founded your company, you stayed in your native Slovenia, and although your company has offices worldwide, you're still based in Slovenia.
Correct.
Which is also, I think, an interesting lesson or an interesting example for all of us, that you don't need to go to the other side of the world to develop your projects and to...
If I may reply to that, I mean, I think I'm a European, right? Slovenia is a very small country. And, you know, Czech maybe is a bit bigger, but still small compared to the others. And I think we should really consider ourselves European. Of course, I live in Slovenia. The region is Slovenia. Okay? And it's a very nice country, by the way, to live in. I mean, but so is Portugal, and so is every other country for yourself, right? But, you know, as I said, I have my family there. It's a nice, quality of life is very good. But, you know, you can work outside, right? And, you know, I go to Shanghai, I'll go to New York, I'll go to Silicon Valley, and then from the dynamic life, I come back home, you know, and then I'm with my family, I relax. And also, I think it's not just the work, it's not just the money, but it's really the contribution to society that, you know, makes my life fulfilled.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had the feeling you were going to get this reaction. Jiří, going back to national challenges, we know that the level of investment in R&I in the EU is far away from the 3% ambition. We are at around 2.3% overall, on average. We range, member states' level of investment range from 0.47, so very, very low, to 3.5, very respectable. What do we need to do, what can we do to convince not ministers of research, because they will all agree, but what can we do to convince our ministers of finance, our prime ministers, that it is important to invest in R&I at the national level, that this is not an expense, that it's an investment?
I think science is critical to achieving the goal that I think all Europeans share, and that is a better, healthier and more quality life. And we live in technological age in which our capacity as the EU to tackle these challenges, to design new technologies, to adapt to climate change, will be based on science. So I think that is the answer. It may not be that clear to everyone nowadays that we have wars on some edges of the EU, but in the end, the life aspirations of Europeans and their fulfillment are very much underpinned by the achievements of science. And also our ability to, as every country and institute and region, to pick some specialization very smartly, and also to translate the results wisely to practice in wider systems, so that you can live in a small place, but you have digital access to health services, and you can very easily contact with your doctor, or you can be in home care, as one practical example. And that's something for which I believe Europe is very well equipped, but some things need to be better organized, and we need to put that highly on the agenda, because that's it's maybe about something EU can do with the framework programs, but national governments should more apply these tools in our regular work with maybe framework, multi-annual budgets and plans like that. That often at the national level is missing, and then the annual debate with the Ministry of Finance is very challenging, but is possible. And Czech Republic is one of those countries that's a bit higher on the average spending on R&D, although that's not perfect. The other thing is really to specialize, to find what you can do best and what's the field in which you can also liaise and collaborate with others, so that we don't replicate things done elsewhere.
No, indeed, the Czech Republic is in a good position, and I agree with you that it's possible to have this dialogue with finance ministers, although their job is to say no.
It's sometimes possible, but always necessary.
Always necessary. I see that we are having some questions in Slido, and I saw one there that I thought was particularly interesting to ask to Graça Carvalho, as an expert in the program, thinking about the future program, because we're already thinking about the future program, although we're in the middle of the current one. So works Europe. And there's one question there that caught my eye, Graça, and that is, shouldn't the aim be that we don't need widening in the future, and we have a trend of increasing widening? What would you say to that, Graça? Do we have a trend of increasing widening? Do we want to phase widening out?
We still need to increase widening. Of course, it's like the quotas. Our objective is to, in the future, that we don't need them anymore. But for a transition period, they are important instruments to achieve to our objective. So we really have a concentration of the projects and the funding in the center of Europe, and we have the periphery and the eastern countries, southern countries with lower values of funding. So we need to act, and we have tried first with dissemination and soft actions, and they were not enough. So we need to have something that is more efficient in order to have for a transition period partners included in the framework program, and after they start and they get used to it, they create their own network, and we don't need it anymore. But we still need actions like teaming. There is other processes that are have been tried in the past, and they are also quite effective. I remember when Portugal joined the European project, we used that they had calls where member states that were behind the average of the participation could join existing consortia. It was exceptional, but it's a way that from certain countries that have low participation, you can have partners already entering in consortia that already exist. Uh, and I have to be clear, all need to be excellent. So the criteria of excellence is always there in the teaming, in these schemes of adding new partners to existing consortia. They need to be excellent, and excellent is the only criteria. But we need to have a push in order to get rid of this difference in the beginning, because when they are inside, when they build their network, when they get used to the system of the framework program, these excellence groups that usually do not participate, they start participating. So it's this initial inertia that we need to fight.
Indeed, and these are not quick processes. These are not quick fixes. They take time to produce results indeed. Jiří, you wanted to come in.
So, for example, just you take the example of Portugal, we have increased a lot, and we very soon probably will not are so much of schemes like the ones that we have been in the past, like the teaming and helping schemes of the widening. So we are near the point where we will not need anymore. Not yet, but approaching that. And I hope that other countries in Europe do the same way, and they get to a point where they don't need to be involved in the schemes of this. They apply directly and they are successful.
Indeed, Jiří.
Must say that I think one of the best things about Europe is that it has created a very large space for competition among research institutes and researchers in form of horizon schemes and ERC in particular, which is also very important for the smaller countries as a clear benchmark of scientific excellence. But I'm also aware that success in those schemes in general and the performance in general requires building institutional capacity. And for that reason, I would still say widening, if remodeled a bit, has a place in the next framework program. And I would also add maybe that I know there's floating the idea of the widening of regions, which from some perspectives feels logical. But regions, unless you are part of a federal state, do not really operate a full-scale research and innovation policy. And so I think that they're not the units that really would fit this. I think it's really better to keep the concept as it is, but remodel it towards empowering these structures that have emerged to really overcome the gap so that in the after the next framework program, we can possibly do without it.
I only have one certainty, Iji, and that is that this will be a major discussion in the next framework program, in the next negotiation. I see time is flying by, and there's one issue that I wanted to discuss a little bit with you, Mark, and that is talent and attracting talent. Yes. This is, I think, central to the discussion about access to excellence, about bridging the R&I divide. How do you, as the CEO of a company operating in Slovenia, also elsewhere, how do you attract talent to Slovenia, to Europe? How do you keep talent in Europe? Do you have experiences that you can share with us?
I have a good recipe. Actually, I quote a Korean person. 10 years ago was a conference in Korea, and there was somebody from Korea, a Korean person. He studied in America, got a PhD in America. He came to Korea, and I said, hey, how do you Koreans attract the good people and bring them back? And he said, very simple, give them good projects. And this is exactly what we are doing. I mean, we have to keep in mind, everybody, people everywhere in Europe are clever people, they are well educated, there are maybe some slight differences, but I think in also the widening countries, level of education, level of knowledge is equal everywhere, okay? So, and this is important. So we have to give these people something, a better chance, and chance means you have to find interesting either national or international project. It's funny, I mean, physicists who study at the University of Ljubljana, it's their dream job to work in our company, okay? Not because we are so good, but because our customers, the big national laboratories that we work for, are so good. So this is what we have to give the people, okay? You want to say something?
And one important thing again, we need to ensure that people at and before the peak of their intellectual productivity are given independence to lead on those projects, to leave their mark, and that's often more motivating than the funding itself. And if we look on that from that perspective, you can realize that you can hire excellent people from all around the world, because not that many positions at any given time in a given field is available. So giving people independence and their chance, I think that's absolutely essential to foster talent.
So we now are practically at the end. This did go indeed by very fast. Something to think about for the next R&I days, I would say. But I would like to give 10 seconds to each of you, maybe beginning with you, Graça, for a final message that you would like to leave with the audience today.
I hope that next framework program is well funded, is simple, and is inclusive, that all can apply and be successful in spite of the origin in Europe.
Well noted. Thank you, Graça. Mark.
I would say widening has to find the proper balance between meritocracy, where you want to give the projects to the best, and solidarity, where you want to help those who are maybe not the best but could become the best a chance to get out. And this is your job to find the right balance.
That's a big challenge. Jiří.
My job. I think widening and Horizon in general needs to bring to everyone in the European research space the self-confidence and institutional capacity and autonomy to realize their dreams. Because you have two occupations in which you can change society, and that's essentially politics and in research is much more in your hands.
Thank you very much, Jiří. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Graça. Thank you all for listening, and this is where we have to stop.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, that was a really excellent panel, of course, all about excellence. The next workshops are about to commence. Got about 5 minutes to get there. Workshop Room 1, Enhancing R&I Excellence. Workshop Room 2, Regional Innovation Valleys. Thank you. We'll see you back here just after 5.